Right now, there are thousands of protesters in the US unchaining their desperations to seek fairness and equality over the Black Lives Matter allegations. There are several thousands of movements pleading the jurisdictions and local authorities to step forward in eradicating gender-based violations. There are altercations ranging from the voices of teenagers to those of adults if they can accept the existence of more than two genders. There are pros and there are cons among people's thoughts if they can accept federalism based on minorities. So on and so forth, the world is burdened by all the collisions due to divisions among people, and the only thing it lacks and simultaneously deserves is love and compassion.
While this earth is charged with heat over division, discrimination, and desperation, we decided to send our senses for a search for the root causes of these detrimental predicaments. And within the adventure, we found one underrated 20th century icon. He is Professor John Rawls, an American moral and political philosopher in the liberal tradition. His exposition on the fundamental called original position caught our eyes as it gave the glimpse of a perfect paradigm of substantial equality.
Rawls creates an imaginary situation in which the members of a society are to decide on a set of principles designed to make their society just. He mentions the fundamental called veil of ignorance, and under that, he mentions that the people inside the situation are not acknowledged if they are rich or poor, have high or low social status, old or young, and what will be their economic or political situation in the society.
Now, someone might claim that this is a very impractical situation, rather a fairy tale looking story, because you can't make people forget who they are in the society and they're mostly concerned about their wealth, possession, and class. Now, we're not saying this is a practical thing either, but what we're saying is that we can take the moral side of this for our advantage. Because as per Rawls, when people are given the authority to decide on a political constitution that guides them, or rather rules them, the main thing that they care about is their personal interest. Now, as per this imaginary situation, when people do not know what their class, or rather what their group is, there is no personal interest to protect, so the only interest that they will protect is the interest of the society.
Rawls eventually makes every decision maker equal in terms of their interests. This is designed to ensure that the ideas put forward really are the best for all members of society, since nobody will be willing to disadvantage a section of the community if they might find themselves a member of it.
If we take slavery back in the day as an example and question ourselves why only the blacks were a part of it when it started and why only the blacks had to suffer when it continued, it is because of the interest that the other group had to protect, like supremacy of the white people, dignity, and pride. So what Rawls tried to break down was that when there is a dominant group and a personal interest to protect, the other less dominant groups had to suffer because they did not meet liberties and rights as the other group which was dominant.
The members of the society in the original position are guided by two principles of justice, first one being the equal distribution of basic liberties and second one being the distribution of wealth. Under the second one, Rawls states that no inequality of distribution of wealth will be tolerated unless that difference work for the betterment of the worst off group of the society.
Now, the second theory of justice by Rawls is very complicated and in the meantime very dramatic in my personal opinion, because it talks about the distribution of monetary values, and money in the present world is very complicated because it is surrounded by many theories, principles, and legal matters. So throwing in a principle by Rawls to stand out amidst so much discussions is very, very difficult to do, so we accept the fact that it is very impractical, so therefore we are going to leave it aside. And also we need to be very conscious about the fact that this could lead to a very unnecessary feud between capitalism and socialism. So we have to leave this aside and give our attention to the first theory of justice, which is about the equal distribution of liberties.
Rawls elaborates the first theory of justice as he says everyone shall have to the greatest degree possible the basic liberties, and these are the basic political liberties like liberty to vote,
liberty to speak on political matters, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly. He expects everyone in the society to have these liberties at the original position. Rawls always had expectations to give equal liberties and rights to people, and it was clear when he wanted everyone to be in equal looking shoes in his original position. And in that original position, when everyone is given equal rights and liberties plus the authority to decide on political constitution, the outcome of that particular constitution could be foreseen as something zero discriminatory, because the ones who form it with equal rights have no reason whatsoever to disrupt that good link, because they don't have any sort of private interest to protect. Now, if we take the current society, rights are made, constitutions are made, but the execution is rather questionable because the local authorities that govern them have personal interest to protect through their income, the discriminations and inequalities. But thanks to the veil of ignorance under Rawls' theory, this discrimination won't happen because people don't have a personal interest to protect. In this way, Rawls creates a moral story. It tells us an initial interest would later on result in a massive distinction between two or more groups. He presents veil of ignorance as the long-term remedy to a world without justice. There will be no grouping of liberties, and neither will there be labeling of rights. And the takeaway from this great theory is that this great equality will not only exist at the start of original position, but it will perceive even after the formation of a non-discriminatory constitution as the society moves on. When it comes to the incorporation of this theory into the modern structure at a moral level, there are two main problems. First one being the practicality of veil of ignorance, and second one being the ability for all to make a political constitution. The answer to the first question, in my personal opinion, is a reform of the educational system right from the primary level. I do believe in the fact that schools these days do give their concern to equality, but in my personal opinion, this is a very unpopular opinion. Too much concern on equality could result on a later on division. Now, for an example, if your teacher comes in and tells you you have to give much care to the black friend of yours as much as care you give to your white friends, the kid starts to question themselves. Why would we give much care to the black kid? Is he someone different? Is he from a different kind? And so on and so forth. So the ideology that black color is something scientific is completely taken away and is substituted by a very artificial thing, like you have to give your concern to minorities and all that. So this could go either way. When the child grows up, he could be someone who talks for equality, and because of the division that was infused into his head, he could actually go against minorities. So therefore, a basic reform of the educational systems is needed, and something intellectual is needed as well. The answer to the second problem here is a good representation of your ideology at the highest level, and you already know what that is democracy. A good interpretation of democracy is all what's needed as a solution to this second problem, and in my personal opinion, good democracy is when your voice is actually represented in the highest level, at the highest level of the society, which is the parliament. So a good representative and your voice combined together makes the solution for this second problem. And the first solution and second solution altogether makes one good long-term solution to this inequality problem, and I think it is more effective than a sudden riot or a protest. And with all that, we leave a question. Do you see the morality of original position as a long-term remedy for the predicaments we are facing?